humanity has been looking for lives on other planets for at least a century and a half. In this half-time, our technology has had a huge leap, but we have not yet established any contact. Instead, we can say that the history of the search for extraterrestrial lives to this day has been a constant disappointment. But who knows, we are close to finding some evidence. One question that circulates is, what appearance would extraterrestrial lives have? The answer to this question can be found here in today's video. Welcome to our Wikipedia Plus channel. You can find out all this by watching today's content. So, let's go? Time to embark on our journey. Lucas and Len, when we read the encyclopedias and maps of the Middle Ages, we notice something curious. It does not matter where the author is from. In relation to the countries near his home, information is presented with reliability. But the further away, the more places acquire a mystical and wild image. And when you arrive on a distant continent, it was believed that there were dragons and people with dog heads living in these places. Before we ridicule people of that time, we must think that we are not very different from our ancestors. If we look at popular culture, we realize that we imagine the possible lives of distant planets in the same way. Perhaps it is possible that there is some monster on these planets. But it is also possible that it looks like some animal that we already know here on Earth. If there is any alien there, it is possible that it has an appearance similar to our human beings. Aliens with dog heads are rare. But those with a grayish skin and giant eyes are commonly portrayed. It is true that many disagree with this perspective, facing it as something primitive and without much logic. On the other hand, some sci-fi authors seek to portray extraterrestrial life in such a strange way that perhaps it is not even possible to communicate. We can cite as an example the novel Solaris, by author Stanislaw Lem, one of the most famous works of the genre. In this book, a planet called Solaris is portrayed, and in it appears an ocean that covers almost completely the planet. This ocean reveals itself to be a unique entity, and apparently endowed with intelligence. Despite the various attempts to contact, because it is very different from us Earthlings, the book has a tragic ending. Well, tragic for humans at least, right? After all, who is right in this story? Do aliens have an appearance similar to Earthlings, just like George Lucas portrayed in Star Wars? Or are Stanislaw Lem's supporters right? Perhaps thinking that aliens and Earthlings are similar may sound like something extremely simplistic. However, it is enough for us to analyze the living beings on our planet to confirm the validity of this thought. For example, vertebrates have several similarities. Fish, amphibians, reptile, birds and mammals have the same origin. So the skeleton is made up of similar principles. However, the comparison is already more difficult with insects. Between fungi and vegetables, then, except for the biochemical principles, there is practically no point in common between the two. And if we go back a little in time, we discover several organisms that do not adhere to any of our current classification criteria. Among them are the biota of Gabon, Francevillian biota and biota of Huainan, who lived before the Cambrian explosion more than 1 billion years ago. We cannot define whether these bizarre organisms belong to the animal, vegetal kingdom or if it is something completely different. That is, if even on Earth there are organisms that look extraterrestrial, a real extraterrestrial being will not look like anything on this planet. It is not difficult for us to come to this conclusion. Perhaps the aliens are not a gigantic ocean endowed with intelligence like in Solaris. Either way, we could not compare them to beings on this planet. But is it really not? Similar but different terrestrial organisms use carbon compounds for basic structural and metabolic functions. And organic matter, by definition, contains carbon. In addition, in our biochemistry, water acts as a solvent. Non-terrestrial organisms could be formed by hypothetical biochemical types, that is, involving the compound of another element or other solvent instead of water. For example, there are scientists who discuss the possibility of silicon being used as an alternative way of life. On the other hand, there is also the allegation that there are many more classes of carbon compounds, and it is being discovered more and more than other compounds. That is, the possibility of organisms that do not have carbon as a base to exist is minimal. And even if they exist, they are extremely fragile and primitive beings. Generally, discussions about beings on another planet revolve around which planet has an adequate environment for these organisms and why. If there really are only beings based on carbon compounds with a liquid solvent, then the only planets that meet the requirements are those that have the same temperature conditions as Earth. If it were possible to replace water with other solvents such as ammonia, methane or ethane, perhaps it would be possible to find life in low-temperature satellites such as Titan. We would like to present an innovative approach to viewers. While we do not discover non-planetary life, it is not possible to prove these hypotheses. So let's leave biochemistry aside for a moment, and let's just think what appearance these organisms would have. Among scientists, a phenomenon called evolutionary convergence is known. It is a phenomenon observed in living beings where two different species develop similar characteristics when exposed to a habitat or similar life habits. For example, whales and dolphins have an appearance that resembles a fish, but from a physiological point of view, they have few points in common. There is an even smaller similarity between snakes, centipedes, and worms. However, all of them have an appearance that resembles a worm, being thin, long, and scratchy. In addition to them, the pterosaurs of the past resemble the appearance of large birds of the present day. That is, even if it is an ocean covered by water, ethane or sulfuric acid, would the large pluricellular organisms that live there not have an appearance similar to the living beings on Earth? If it were possible to find these organisms, in the sea we would see something similar to a fish or a seaweed, and in the sky we would see a bird. It may be that terrestrial organisms have a bizarre appearance, but it must have some characteristic that resembles the animals of our planet. In relation to the forms of intelligent life, perhaps the humanoid type is more suitable. There are three factors that make man an intelligent being. The first is that the human brain is much larger than the spinal cord. The second is that the most developed part of the human brain is the cerebral cortex. The third is that humans are bipedal. Because we are bipedal, we have free hands for various activities. And using our hands is related to brain development. It's hard for us to imagine something that replaces these factors, right? In intelligent life forms, there must be a place where the nervous tissue is concentrated, and the ideal is that it is close to the main sensory organs. It must also have some limb like the arm that serves to manipulate things. We can think of other forms, but they would not be so adequate. Thus, we can assume that intelligent life forms have an appearance that may resemble ours a little. Reiterating, even if aliens have a similar appearance to us, from a biochemical and physiological point of view, they would be completely different. Even if we can drink water on other planets, maybe it's better not to put any kind of food in your mouth. If some unknown substance is ingested, it may be that the body does not react, but in the worst case, it may cause intoxication or anaphylactic shock. But maybe we can understand the psychological side of intelligent life forms, because if they evolve in a condition similar to ours, it is likely that they reach the same conclusion in relation to the need for cooperation. About them having a completely different cultural context is another problem. And in relation to the ocean of suns or completely different life forms that do not fit into our concept, do they really exist? Maybe it's possible. But if this way of life is so strange that we would not even be able to differentiate it from an inanimate phenomenon, maybe we are only interested in the theoretical point of view. And our video today ends here. Thank you all for the audience. I hope you enjoyed this content. As we saw about the question of who is right, both Len and Lucas are right. In this vast universe with countless stars and planets, there must be beings that are or are not similar to what exists here on Earth. About what extraterrestrial life would be like, maybe this answer is the most reasonable we can give. And if you liked our reflection, leave a like on this video. And don't forget to share and subscribe to our channel. Let's expand the circle of people interested in science and space. Well guys, it's time to say goodbye. But we will meet again soon here on the Wikipedia Plus channel. A big hug and see you there.